You've never been a misfit. You've been the only person in the room who actually knew what was going on, and I can prove it. See, there's this thing that happens to people like you, people who watch more than they talk, who feel everything a little too deeply, who never quite felt like they belonged in the rooms they were standing in. Everyone told you that was a problem. It's not. Psychology actually has a name for what you are, and once you hear it, I promise, you're never going to see yourself the same way again. Okay, so can I be honest with you for a second? I used to think something was genuinely wrong with me. Like everyone else at a party is laughing, talking over each other, loving every second of it, and I'm standing there thinking, wait, why does that guy look like he's pretending? Why is she smiling, but her eyes are doing something completely different? And nobody else seemed to notice. Nobody. And I'd go home thinking, what is wrong with me? Why can't I just be normal? Here's the thing though. There's a researcher named Elaine Aron. She spent years studying people who process the world more deeply than average, and she found that about 15 to 20% of people, that's roughly 1 in 5, are wired to absorb emotional and sensory information at a level most people literally can't access. 1 in 5. So you weren't the weird one. You were just running a different operating system and nobody gave you the manual. Think about what that actually looks like in real life, though. You walk into a room, and before anyone even opens their mouth, you already know if something's off. You feel the tension. You clock the forced smiles. You notice who's uncomfortable, who's performing, who's quietly having the worst night of their life while pretending they're fine. That's not anxiety. That's not overthinking. That is a level of social intelligence that most people spend their entire lives trying to build, and honestly, most of them never get there. Crazy, right? The thing you were most embarrassed about, that constant, exhausting awareness, is actually the thing that makes you more emotionally intelligent than the average person in that room. Okay, here's one that genuinely shocked me when I first came across it. Developmental psychology, which is basically the study of how we grow and figure out who we are, shows that kids who feel different growing up tend to build their identity in a completely different way than everyone else. Most people figure out who they are by just copying the group. They absorb the norms, follow the social scripts, laugh at what everyone laughs at, want what everyone wants. It's almost automatic for them. But you watched those scripts being performed and something in you went, wait, but does anyone actually believe this? That's not social failure. That's independent thinking showing up before you even knew what to call it. Honestly, I think about sitting in school at lunch, not saying much, just watching who sat where, who laughed a little too hard, who was clearly lonely but acting like they weren't. At the time, I thought that meant I was the problem, but I was building a map of human behavior that most people don't even know exists, and so are you. You just didn't have a name for it yet. So let's talk about the observer thing, because this is where it gets really good. Our culture is obsessed with performers, the loudest person, the most confident person, the one who takes up the most space. We've been sold this idea since we were kids. Be seen, be heard, be the main character. And if you're not doing that, you must be shy, broken, lost. But here's what they don't tell you. Observation is its own kind of power, a quieter kind, a smarter kind if I'm being real. Think about the people you actually admire most. The great writers, the brilliant therapists, the filmmakers who make you feel understood by a story that isn't even yours. Almost all of them were observers first. They watched before they spoke. They felt things deeply before they expressed anything. They sat in the uncomfortable silence long enough to actually understand it. Research backs this up too. People who lean toward observation tend to score higher in empathy and emotional regulation because they've spent so much time watching how emotions move through other people, they just get it. You didn't miss out by being the observer. You were in training this whole time. Now, I want to get into something that's a little harder to talk about because I know this isn't all sunshine and good news. There's a kind of loneliness that comes with being this type of person. Psychologists actually call it existential isolation, this quiet awareness that your inner experience is so specific, so layered that it can't ever be perfectly shared with someone else. And yeah, that can hurt. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. But here's what I want you to flip around. That loneliness, it's not emptiness. It's actually evidence of how full your inner world is. You know that feeling? You're in a room full of people, noise everywhere, and you still feel completely alone? That's not you being broken. That's your inner world being so rich, so loud in its own quiet way, that the noise outside literally can't compete with it. And here's the thing, the people who've never felt that way, ask them who they are without mentioning their friend group, their job title, or what they're into this month. A lot of them go blank. But you know exactly who you are when the room goes quiet. That's not nothing. That's actually everything. I want to talk about creativity for a second because this one blew my mind. Research in social psychology shows that people who identified as outsiders or misfits early in life are significantly more likely to develop high-level creative thinking as adults. And the reason is almost too simple. When you're not inside the system, you can see the system. Like everyone else is just living inside the rules, following them without even questioning them. But you've always been standing just outside, looking in, going, wait, but why does it even work like that? Does it have to? That friction you feel, that slight discomfort with the way things are, that's not a personality defect. That is creative energy that hasn't found its direction yet. Some of the most important thinkers, artists, and just genuinely interesting humans in history describe themselves as perpetual outsiders, not because something was wrong with them, but because the distance gave them perspective that insiders simply couldn't access. Your discomfort with the ordinary, it might just be the clearest signal that you were built for something a little less ordinary. Okay, I know what some of you are thinking right now. Sure, but doesn't all this observing mean I'm just passive? Like I'm watching my life instead of living it? I hear that, I really do. But I want to push back on it, gently because it's a fair fear. Observation isn't passivity, it's preparation, it's discernment, it's the difference between reacting and actually choosing. Psychology shows that people who take longer to process social situations before engaging tend to build deeper, more genuine connections when they do show up, because they're not performing connection, they're actually creating it. You might not be the first to speak, but when you do speak, people stop, even if you haven't noticed that yet. You might not join every group, but the relationships you do build, they mean something, they last. Being selective isn't the same as being excluded. You're curating your life, and honestly, there's real wisdom in that. All right, last one, and this might be the most important thing I say today. Dr. Kristen Neff, one of the leading researchers on self-compassion, found that people who treat themselves with the same kindness they'd give a good friend have significantly lower anxiety, stronger resilience, and deeper, more authentic connections with others. Here's the part that quietly devastated me, though. The people least likely to do that are exactly the type of person watching this video. You'd be the first one to sit with a friend who felt like they didn't belong. You'd tell them they're not broken. You'd mean every word. And then you'd go home and be the harshest person in the room to yourself. So I'm going to ask you something, and I want you to actually sit with it. If your closest friend came to you and said, I just never feel like I fit in, like I'm always on the outside looking in, what would you say to them? You wouldn't say, yeah, you're probably right. You'd say, you're not broken, you're just wired differently, and that's okay. Say that to yourself, right now, and actually mean it, because that's where this whole shift starts, not in some big dramatic moment, but in that one quiet second where you stop being the exception to your own compassion. So here's what I want you to take away from all of this. The world is full of people performing a version of belonging that's costing them everything. They're laughing at things they don't find funny, agreeing with things they privately disagree with, filling every silence with noise because silence scares them. You can't do that. You've tried, maybe, but you can't. And yes, that's come with a price. The loneliness, the self-doubt, the years of wondering if you were too much or somehow not enough for the rooms you kept finding yourself in. But that same price, it bought you something most people never get, a real relationship with yourself, a clarity about what's genuine and what's performance, a depth of feeling that when you let it out in your work, your art, your conversations, moves people in ways that catch them off guard. You were never the misfit. You were the one paying attention when everyone else was just going through the motions. And the next time you're standing at the edge of the room, watching, processing, feeling that familiar quiet distance, remember this. The edge has the best view, and you've always known exactly what you were looking at. If this hits something real for you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you want more of this, the stuff that actually goes somewhere, that talks to you like a real person, subscribe. We're not here to just make content. We're here to make sense of who you are. And we're just getting started.